When I handed my son the keys to my restaurant on his 30th birthday and said, "This is yours now. Make me proud," he looked me straight in the eye and promised he would. 6 months later, I found out he had signed over the deed to his mother-in-law. When I confronted him, his wife laughed and said, "You're retired, Frank. What do you need a restaurant for?" 2 weeks after that, they showed up at my door, bags in hand, asking to move in. I changed the locks while they watched. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The smell of garlic and rosemary used to be the first thing you noticed walking into Moretti's on Federal Hill in Providence, Rhode Island. That and the sound of my mother's voice, even though she had been gone 20 years. Her recipes lived in the walls of that building, soaked into the brick like olive oil into bread. I opened Moretti's in 1986 with $11,000, a second-hand pizza oven, and the kind of stubbornness only a first-generation Italian-American from a broke family could have. 37 years later, it was 3 locations across Rhode Island, the original on Federal Hill, a second in Cranston, a third in Newport, right off Thames Street, pulling in summer tourists who came back every year asking for the Sunday gravy by name. Combined revenue just under $4 million a year. 62 employees. My name on everything. My son, Vincent, was my only child. His mother, my wife Angela, died when he was 9. Brain aneurysm. One morning she was making coffee. By noon she was gone. I raised that boy alone, cooked for him, drove him to baseball practice, helped him with homework at the restaurant after closing. His math textbook spread out on the bar while I wiped down tables. He grew up in that kitchen, knew how to make a proper bolognese before he could drive. When he graduated from Johnson & Wales with a culinary degree, I cried in the parking lot where nobody could see me. I thought the plan was obvious. He would learn the business, run it someday, carry on what I had built, what his grandmother had started in her kitchen in Federal Hill 60 years ago with nothing but flour and determination. Vincent met Diane at a fundraiser in Newport 3 years ago. She was 31, worked in marketing for some firm in Boston, drove a BMW she could not actually afford. I know this because I checked. Old habit from running a business. You learn to read people by what they spend versus what they earn. Diane was polished, smart, knew how to work a room. But something about the way she looked at my restaurants, at my house in Barrington, at the boat I kept at the marina, made my hands itch. Not the way you look at things you admire, the way you look at things you are already counting. They got engaged fast. 6 months of dating, then a ring that cost Vincent $12,000. Money I had given him as a bonus for managing the Cranston location. I said nothing. A man proposes to the woman he loves. That is his business. But when Diane's mother, Gloria, started showing up to family dinners with opinions about everything, the menu, the decor, the prices, the property values of my neighborhoods, I felt that itch again. Gloria was a real estate agent from Warwick. Divorced twice. Drove a leased Cadillac. Talked about money the way some people talk about religion, constantly and with absolute certainty that she understood it better than everyone else. The wedding was beautiful. St. Mary's Church on Broadway. Reception at the Newport location. I paid for everything. $87,000. Venue, catering, flowers, photographer. The band Diane insisted on flying in from New York. I wrote the check without blinking because that is what fathers do. Vincent hugged me at the end of the night, whispered in my ear, "I'll make it worth it, Dad. Every penny." I believed him. That was my mistake. After the honeymoon, Vincent came to me with what he called a proposal. He wanted me to officially transfer ownership of Moretti's Federal Hill, the original location, to him. Not just management, the deed, the building, the business license, everything. He had a speech prepared, talked about legacy, about stepping up, about proving himself. Diane sat beside him, nodding at all the right moments, her hand on his knee like a coach signaling plays. I was 63 years old. My knees hurt. My back ached from decades of standing on kitchen tile. The idea of stepping back from at least one location had crossed my mind. And this was my son. My blood. The boy who had grown up rolling meatballs on the prep table. So, on his 30th birthday, I sat across from him at the oak desk in my office above the Federal Hill kitchen, the same desk where I had signed the original lease in 1986, and I handed him the keys. Signed the transfer documents my lawyer had prepared. Moretti's Federal Hill was his. I kept Cranston and Newport. Still had plenty to do. But I gave him the crown jewel, the original, the one with the history and the reputation, the one worth $1.8 million. The first 2 months, everything seemed fine. Vincent kept the menu, kept the staff, called me twice a week with updates. Then the calls dropped to once a week, then every 2 weeks. When I stopped by unannounced on a Tuesday in March, the hostess I had hired 15 years ago was gone, replaced by a girl I did not recognize. The menu had changed. Fusion items, truffle oil on everything, a $16 cocktail called the Gloria, listed on the specials board. I found Vincent in the kitchen. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me, the way a kid looks when you catch him with his hand in the cookie jar. "Dad, I was going to tell you, Diane had some ideas about modernizing, reaching a younger demographic." Behind him, through the pass-through window, I could see Diane in the dining room, rearranging tables with her mother. Gloria was measuring the walls with a tape measure, measuring my walls. "What is Gloria doing here?" I kept my voice steady. "She's helping us evaluate the space. She thinks the upstairs could be converted into a separate rental unit. Add an income stream." Income stream. My mother's recipes were on those walls. The photo of her and my father on their wedding day hung above the bar. I had built a shrine to my family's history, and they were measuring it for square footage. I left without raising my voice. Drove home to Barrington, sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes, breathing. Then I called my lawyer, Dennis Kowalski. Been with me since the Cranston expansion. "Dennis, I need you to look into something. The Federal Hill property. I want to know if any filings have been made since the transfer." He called back the next morning. "Frank, you need to come in. There's been a deed transfer. Vincent signed the building over to Gloria Marchetti 3 weeks ago." I did not speak for a long time. "Frank, you there?" "I'm here." "What exactly did he sign?" "A quitclaim deed. Transfers all ownership interest to Gloria. No money exchanged. It was filed with the city clerk on February 28th. My son had given my restaurant, the restaurant his grandmother's recipes built, to his mother-in-law. For nothing, I sat down. Not because I chose to, because my legs stopped working. The room tilted sideways for a second, then righted itself. I gripped the edge of my kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. "Can I get it back?" My voice came out flat. Quitclaim deeds are hard to reverse. If Vincent signed voluntarily, there's limited legal recourse. But if there was fraud, coercion, or if he didn't understand what he was signing, we might have grounds. Find out everything. I want a full picture by Friday." Dennis paused. "Frank, how much was that property worth? Building and business combined?" $1.8 million. At least. Silence on his end. "Then, I'll have everything by Thursday." I did not call Vincent. Did not drive to Federal Hill. Instead, I did what I always do when something breaks. I examined the damage before I decided whether to repair it or tear it down. My home office became a war room. I pulled every financial document related to the transfer, the original deed, Vincent's tax returns that I still had copies of, because I had co-signed his first apartment lease and never stopped keeping records. I logged into the business accounts I still had view access to. What I found made the deed transfer look like a parking ticket. In the 4 months since Vincent took over Federal Hill, he had drawn $320,000 from the business account. Revenue was down 18%. Payroll had been cut. My longtime sous chef, Marco, who had been with me for 22 years, was let go and replaced with a line cook making $11 less per hour. The money Vincent pulled out went to a joint account he shared with Diane. From there, it scattered. $41,000 to Gloria Marchetti, labeled consulting fees. $28,000 to a company called Marchetti Property Group, Gloria's LLC. $15,000 to a luxury car dealership in Warwick. Diane's BMW had been traded in for a Mercedes. $17,000 in credit card payments, all on cards in Diane and Gloria's names. The pattern was surgical. Vincent was the pipeline. Diane was the valve. Gloria was the tank collecting everything at the bottom. My son had not just given away my building. He was being drained, systematically, by a family that had identified him as a mark the day they met him. Dennis confirmed it Thursday afternoon. The quitclaim deed was prepared by a notary connected to Gloria's real estate firm. Vincent signed it. He wasn't coerced in any legally provable way. But Frank, the financial pattern here, this looks like undue influence at minimum. If we can show Vincent was manipulated into these decisions, we might get the deed voided. Do it. File whatever you need to file. I hung up and started building my evidence folder. Every bank statement, every transaction, every dollar that left my son's hands and landed in Gloria's pocket. I printed it all, organized it in labeled sections, created a timeline on a legal pad. October, Vincent takes ownership. November, Diane introduces modernization plans. December, Gloria begins consulting. January, large withdrawals begin. February, deed transferred to Gloria. March, I find out. 5 months. That is how long it took them to strip the engine out of a business I spent 37 years building. Monday morning, I drove to the Cranston location. Business as usual. My people, my recipes, my name on the door. I called a staff meeting. Told everyone nothing was changing at Cranston or Newport. Told them Federal Hill was under separate management now. Left it at that. Their faces told me they already knew something was wrong. That evening, Vincent called. First time in 3 weeks. Dad, I heard you were asking questions about the Federal Hill accounts. His voice was strained, rehearsed. Who told you that, Diane or Gloria? Silence. Then, Dad, it's not what you think. Gloria is helping us restructure. The building transfer is temporary. For liability purposes. It's a business strategy. Vincent, your mother-in-law owns my restaurant. There is no strategy that makes that acceptable. It's my restaurant, Dad. You gave it to me. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were cruel, because they were true. I had given it to him, and he had given it away. You're right, I said quietly. I did give it to you, and you handed it to a woman who has known you for 2 years. Your grandmother's recipes are on those walls, Vincent. Your mother and I had our first date in that dining room. But you're right. It's yours to destroy. I hung up. Did not answer when he called back 4 times that night. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with Dennis on the legal challenge. We also retained a forensic accountant named Sarah Chen, sharp and methodical. Her report came back in 6 days. Of the $320,000 withdrawn from Federal Hill's accounts, only $91,000 could be traced to legitimate business expenses. The rest, $229,000, had been siphoned through consulting fees, property company payments, personal purchases, and cash withdrawals with no documentation. Sarah highlighted one transaction in red. A wire transfer of $65,000 from the Federal Hill business account to Moretti Property Group dated 1 day before the quitclaim deed was filed. This looks like payment for the deed transfer, she said during our meeting. Gloria didn't give your son nothing in exchange for the building. She charged him. With his own money. Well, your money. I stared at the number until it burned itself into my memory. Then I added it to the evidence binder. 2 weeks after I stopped answering Vincent's calls, Diane posted on Facebook. She did not mention me by name, but the message was clear. Some people think money gives them the right to control their children forever. Real family means letting go, supporting without strings. We are building something beautiful and no amount of bitterness will stop us. 84 reactions, 40 comments. People who did not know me offering sympathy to the woman who was helping dismantle my life's work. Gloria shared the post with the caption, So proud of my daughter for standing strong. The comments piled up. Stay strong, girl. Toxic parents never change. You deserve better. Robert, my seafood supplier for 20 years, texted me. Saw something online. You okay? I told him I was handling it. Did not elaborate. Did not defend myself in their comment section. Did not play their game on their field. The legal process moved slowly, but my other plans moved fast. I called a meeting at Dennis's office with Patricia, a trust attorney he recommended. Told her what I wanted, everything I own. The 2 remaining restaurants, the house in Barrington, the boat, my retirement accounts. All of it goes into an irrevocable trust. Beneficiary is a culinary scholarship fund for underprivileged kids in Rhode Island. Vincent gets nothing. Patricia looked at me over her glasses. Mr. Moretti, that's a significant decision. Have you considered a cooling off period? I've had 63 years to cool off. Draw up the papers. She did. I signed them 10 days later. Meanwhile, Dennis filed a lawsuit to void the quitclaim deed on grounds of undue influence and breach of fiduciary duty. The filing was public record. Gloria's lawyer called within 48 hours, threatening a countersuit. Dennis was not impressed. Let them file. Discovery will be very interesting for them. Then came the part I did not plan. The Rhode Island Hospitality Association's annual gala, held every April at the Omni Hotel in Providence. I had been a board member for 9 years, a sponsor for 14, 300 people from the restaurant and hotel industry across the state. I had my usual table, front and center. The week before the gala, Dennis called. Vincent and Diane bought tickets. Last-minute registration. I was not surprised. They're going to try something public. Almost certainly, Connor's playbook. He caught himself. I mean, their playbook. Corner you in front of colleagues, force reconciliation, make you look unreasonable if you refuse. Let them come. The night of the gala, I arrived early. Charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie. Angela's wedding ring on a chain under my collar, where I had worn it for 22 years. The ballroom smelled like fresh linen and ambition. I shook hands, talked business, laughed at jokes I had heard before. Normal. Comfortable. My territory. I saw them arrive around 7:30. Vincent in a suit I had bought him for graduation. Diane in something that probably cost more than Marco's last monthly paycheck, the sous chef they had fired. Gloria was with them. Of course she was. They waited until after dinner. Until the keynote speaker finished. Until the room was relaxed and attentive. Then Vincent stood up from their back table and walked toward the podium. The MC, a local food critic I had known for years, looked confused but stepped aside. I'm sorry to interrupt. Vincent's voice wavered. My name is Vincent Moretti. Most of you know my father, Frank. He's been part of this community for almost 40 years. He paused, swallowed hard. There's been a misunderstanding in our family. Things got out of hand. Business disagreements that became personal. I'm standing here tonight because I want my father to know, in front of the people he respects most, that I love him. And I'm asking him to forgive me, to sit down with us and work this out. Dad, please. Every head in the room turned to me. 300 pairs of eyes. The trap was elegant. Refuse, and I am the monster. Accept, and the narrative resets to family disagreement. Gloria dabbed her eyes with a napkin at the back table. Performance art. I stood. Buttoned my jacket. Walked to the podium. Vincent handed me the microphone like it was a peace offering. His hand was shaking. I looked at him for a long moment. My son, the boy who used to fall asleep on flour sacks in the kitchen while I closed up. The man who had handed my mother's legacy to a stranger. Vincent asked for forgiveness in front of people I respect. So let me respond in front of people I respect. My voice was steady. Behind me, the projector screen came to life. Dennis had coordinated with the hotel's AV team that afternoon. I built Moretti's in 1986. One location, $11,000, my mother's recipes. 37 years later, it was 3 restaurants. $4 million in revenue, 62 employees. Last October, I transferred the original Federal Hill location to my son, a gift, his birthright. The screen showed the original deed transfer. Clean, simple, father to son. 4 months later, my son signed a quitclaim deed transferring that property, worth $1.8 million, to his mother-in-law, Gloria Marchetti, for $0. The quitclaim deed appeared on screen. Gloria's name in bold. I did not look at her. I did not need to. In those same 4 months, $320,000 was withdrawn from the Federal Hill business account. A forensic audit shows that $229,000 went to personal expenses, consulting fees to Gloria Marchetti, payments to her property company, luxury purchases. Sarah Chen's summary appeared. Categories, amounts, destinations. My 22-year sous chef, Marco Benedetti, was fired to cut costs while this money was being extracted. I let that sit for a moment. People in this room knew Marco. He had catered half their private events. I have signed an irrevocable trust. When I'm gone, everything I still own, the Cranston and Newport locations, my home, my savings, goes to a culinary scholarship fund for kids in Rhode Island who want to learn to cook but can't afford school. The trust document appeared. The fund's name at the top. Not a dollar goes to anyone in this room, including my son. Because legacy isn't blood. Legacy is what you build and who you build it for. I set the microphone down on the podium. The room was completely silent. Then someone at the back started clapping. Then the table next to them. Then the whole room. Standing ovation. Not polite applause. The sustained, deliberate kind that means something. I walked back to my table without looking at Vincent. Without looking at Diane or Gloria, I heard chairs scrape. Movement toward the exit. They left the way they had come in, but quieter this time. Much quieter. Robert leaned over from the next table. Frank. I had no idea. That Facebook post made it sound completely different. It usually does, I said. 2 days later, Gloria's lawyer withdrew the countersuit threat. A week after that, Vincent's lawyer contacted Dennis about settling the quitclaim deed challenge. Gloria agreed to transfer the property back to avoid discovery, which would have exposed her entire financial history to the court. The deed came back to me on a Tuesday morning. I signed it, then drove to Federal Hill, parked across the street, looked at the building. My name was still on the front, but someone had put a neon sign in the window advertising half-price cocktails. I sat in my truck for a long time. Then I made a decision. I did not give the restaurant back to Vincent. I called Marco, asked him to come to my office. When he sat across from me, confused and a little nervous, I slid a folder across the desk. I want you to run Federal Hill. Full operational control. Salary. Profit sharing. Path to partnership if you want it. You've earned it more than anyone I know. Marco stared at the folder, then at me. His eyes got wet, but he did not let it fall. Mr. Moretti, I don't know what to say. Say yes. And put the bolognese back on the menu. That truffle oil nonsense has to go. Vincent came to my house one last time. A Sunday evening in May. He came alone. No Diane. No Gloria. He stood on my porch in jeans and a wrinkled shirt. He looked 10 years older than 30. Dad, can I come in? I stood in the doorway. Say what you need to say. I messed up. I know that. Diane and her mother, they had me convinced it was all normal. Business restructuring, they called it. I didn't see what was happening until it was too late. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. I'll work the dish pit if you let me come back. I looked at my son. Saw Angela's eyes in his face. Saw the little boy on the flour sacks. Saw the man who had signed away his grandmother's legacy because a woman told him to. The restaurants are in a trust now. I couldn't change it if I wanted to. And I don't want to. His face crumbled. What about us? What about you and me? You chose your family, Vincent. You chose Diane and Gloria over the family that built you. That's done. I can't undo what you did, and I can't undo what I've done. The trust is irrevocable. Dad, please. Go home. Build your own life. You have a culinary degree. You have skills. Use them. But you're not getting another dollar from me, and you're not getting another chance to give away what I built. He stood there for a while. Rain starting to fall, Providence weather, temperamental and gray. I did not invite him inside. Did not offer coffee. Did not soften. Finally, he nodded. Just once. Turned and walked to his car. He sat behind the wheel for 5 minutes before driving away. I watched until the taillights disappeared down the street. I closed the door. Locked it. The house was quiet. Angela's photo on the hallway table. My mother's framed recipe card for Sunday gravy, hanging in the kitchen where it had hung for 30 years. The evidence binders still stacked on my office desk. I left them there. Might need them if Gloria tried anything else, though Dennis said she would not. Her reputation in Warwick real estate was already damaged. Word travels fast in Rhode Island. Everyone knows everyone. That is the blessing and the curse of a small state. I poured myself a glass of the Barolo I had been saving. Sat on my back deck overlooking Narragansett Bay. The water was dark and still. A ferry horn sounded somewhere distant. I thought about Marco reopening Federal Hill with the original menu. Thought about the scholarship fund and the first class of kids who would learn to cook on my dime. Kids who actually wanted it, who would show up early and stay late because they understood that building something real takes everything you've got. My phone sat on the table beside my wine. Dark. Silent. I did not reach for it. 63 years old. 2 restaurants. A house. A boat I never used enough. A life that had been stripped down to its studs and rebuilt in the span of 6 months. Lighter now. Cleaner. No dead weight. No obligations to people who mistook generosity for weakness. The Barolo was good. Angela would have liked it. She always said I saved the good bottles too long, waiting for occasions that never came. She was right about that. She was right about most things. I took another sip. Watched the bay darken as the sun dropped behind Prudence Island. Tomorrow I would go to the Cranston location. Check the walk-in. Review the weekend numbers. Talk to my people. The same life I had lived for 37 years. Minus the weight of a son who had never understood what he was inheriting. Not money. Not buildings. Trust. And once that is gone, no quitclaim deed in the world can bring it back. I finished the wine. Rinsed the glass. Locked the back door. Went to bed. In the morning, the restaurant would need me. And I would be there. The way I had always been. Steady hands. Clear head. Ready to work. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the link on screen. Thank you for watching.